already said it on TikTok, and I don't push it, but when I find indie author books at Second and Charles, first thing I do is come home and start looking people up. And I'm like, okay, so I found this book, and then I found out you were in Tuscaloosa, and I was like, yes, he's cool.
It was completely surreal. It was such a cool moment to have that happen. I hope you know how special it was for me.
Oh, it was special for us too, trust me, because I like rant. So this is my sister. Both of us are named Stephanie. We also have two other sisters that join us periodically, and I ran to her room because she lives with us. I ran to her room and I was like, you'll never believe who Tasha got me in touch with.
I was like, okay, calm down.
Well, I'm humbled. Thank you.
Hey. So what we kind of do is we have some big changes coming up. And what we decided to start doing is more targeted questions to each individual author. And like I showed you, I do go in depth into the book, which kind of gives the author the, oh my God, she read it.
That's I was having this conversation with my daughter last night about the questions you guys asked. I was like, she read this book, really got into it.
I did. And as I go through it, basically, she laughs at me because I'll have 100-something questions, but all of them will be repetitive. So then I have to sit there and go down and go down and go down. And then I just try to get to the core questions. And one, let me explain. I am not a big sci-fi person, but she is. And as I was going through your book and reading it, the only thing on my brain was she has to read your book.
Oh, yeah.
So each of us kind of have our own individual flair, you know?
Yeah.
And we kind of just roll with it. I know who reads what, who can't read what, you know? So I'm the one mostly making decisions on, hey, you're not going to like this, but you will. And she is definitely going to love your book. She wasn't able to read it yet, but
I'm super excited about it. Especially your philosophies in the book from what my sister is telling me and what I'm reading now. A lot of your ideologies are things that, we face just here. It doesn't have to be in a fantasy world, but the way language has changed has shaped the way our world sees things, like religions and, the way our perceptions shift with language. So that's really, fantastic. I'm loving that part.
Well, it came thank you. The inspiration for the book, because I'm a scholar of fascism and the Holocaust, and I was sitting, and this was years ago when I decided to write book one, and now the trilogy is complete. But when I was deciding to write book one, and I was sitting down thinking, I can devote hundreds of man hours to writing nonfiction, or hundreds of man hours to writing my passion project of sci-fi. And I was really struggling with, well, what do I want to do? Because once I start a project, I want to do the whole thing. I want to really dedicate, myself to whichever I decide to start. And my wife and I are watching the Hamilton musical, the Disney, Hamilton musical with Lin-Manuel Miranda. And of course, the musical is bordering over into fiction with how inaccurate it is. But one of the really big, set piece songs had just ended, and my wife, Michaela, turns her phone at me and goes, "Did you know this thing about Alexander Hamilton?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that." And over the next couple of days, Michaela, my wife, had just devoured everything there was to learn about Alexander Hamilton and his role in the revolution and federalism. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. So I want to do this. I want to use fiction to draw people in to history. And so when you mention the ideologies that I put in the book, that's very, very intentional. It is meant to say, okay, I want a casual audience, a general audience, to really seriously approach a fascist movement, its consequences, resistance against it, knowing that most people are going to be really intimidated by a big, scary history book that's, that thick. And uses lots of big academic words and has hundreds of citations. That's just not approachable for most people, especially a lot of young people who are doing a lot of academic reading anyway with when they're in school.
So I had to tell you something. So what really caught my eye is, and I know I'm the God's worst on TikTok about scrolling through and forgetting to like stuff. But when I looked up your book when I got it, I was going through and I actually called my mom. So you have a ton of history lessons on your TikTok, and that is absolute. If anybody in this household is more into history than me, it would be a shocker. I will sit here and watch documentary after documentary after documentary and like different religions, and I'm really big into that. But what touched my heart was some of the stuff you said about the Holocaust, because that hit home for me. My family's from Poland, and they escaped the Nazis in 1941. So it was a big thing to get to see, like, I'm talking to someone who actually understood that it's not a fake and it happened, and he actually doesn't, you went into the history on one of your things and I was just like, man, he gets it. Okay.
I mean, half of it is scholarship, but the other half is empathy, is the understanding that people whose grandparents, like when you talk about, well, what did my great grandfather do in the war? And he was in the Marine Corps, he fought at Guadalcanal. And then someone whose ancestors are more immediately from Eastern Europe, you say, well, what did your grandparents do in the war? And it's, they got murdered in a gas chamber.
Right.
And that is, that's heavy, right? That's incredibly heavy to approach a part of history where for so many people, there is no triumph at the end. There is no coming out the other side of struggle and saying that you've made something of yourself. I can look at my great grandfather, William Ellis Sr., and he comes out of the war and he's got his GI Bill, and it sets his family up, and they're able to start breaking this generations long cycle of addiction. And finally, my granddad was able to give my mom this really good life because he worked at a steel plant and he didn't have to fight, and he didn't have to struggle in incredible poverty his whole life, like his grandfather really, or like his father, really did, and really everyone all the way back really did. And then I got to go to college and I got to get a graduate degree, and my daughter's about to start college. And that's, this triumphant story of heroism that rewarded the next generations. And then you go to Eastern Europe and you say, what was the war for you? And it's, I am the last one left in my family, and all of the other ones are dead. And like that, someone has to do the work of remembering that. Someone has to do the work of accounting for that.
Right. And I definitely agree with that. So it just kind of hit home, and I was just like, okay. Because, I remember my Jaja and my babushka talking about the war and talking about, being told they had to move, and all this stuff. And they were replaced. They were kids younger at the time. They still lived at home with their parents. Their parents got brought to America because the Germans were about to take over their area. The United States moved them out. Mm-hmm. And then my grandfather and my grandmother met on the way to America. So it's a big part of history. Yeah, they were moved. Most of our family is gone from that. But when they rebuilt here, they were Catholic. So big families, everybody's together, and they got a new start. But I remember my Jaja always saying, it's nothing like home. It's nothing like home.
Yeah.
So they didn't get to go home, but they made a new home, and they made the best of it, which is awesome to me. But it's really, it touched my heart. I was like, oh, okay, he's a good history guy, because he actually puts the facts out there, which in that empathy part of it really got to me. So I just appreciated that. I had to say something.
You guys are humbling me, and I've been here for like 10 minutes, and I'm so humbled. Thank you.
We do our research amazingly. Well, I should say I do the research, and everybody gets to hear about the research I did because I get to do it.
Yeah.
But we are going to start off. Go ahead and start off. So how we do it, we kind of do an introduction of you, and I will take snippets of the before conversation and put it in because we talked about your book and we talked about you personally, which I think is very important to show that indie authors are people, because not a lot of people see it that way. I'm gonna give you that, and let's get started.
Let's do.
Welcome to Faraway Sister Haven, where we dissect books, we dive deep, and we have come to the conclusion that every book deserves their own personal questionnaire. I am Twinklebutt, and I'm here with Repairable Zero and Mr. Johnathan, but I want to say it right,
Buchwalter.
Mr. Johnathan was a Marine Corps for the United States. He is a veteran, and he graduated from the University of Alabama in Birmingham. He now teaches social studies and has an extensive history and philosophy videos. And we want to thank him. And he has 3 books out.
His books include the Night Sky Trilogy, The Night Sky Darker, Fire in the House of God, and The Stars Themselves Shall Weep.
And I have his first book here, and I deep dove. I think I broke the spine, which I never do, but I was so excited to read it. We also want to point out his and ours. He has a Patreon with his videos supporting history, facts, and philosophy. We also will be starting a Patreon soon to support Faraway Sister Haven and allow us to continue to do free programming and marketing for indie authors without having to hurt budgets. We also will be doing bi-weekly, maybe monthly, reads and questionnaires with all 4 sisters. So look forward to that. And if you like this, please go over to YouTube, check out us and John Trucks.
Johnster Truck is my handle on every platform.
Trucks. On YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you watch the video all the way through. It really helps both channels. It will make it to where the algorithm sends us out into the universe and says, hey, these people actually do something. So we are going to get into the questions.
All right. So my first question for you is, and with these questions, they're a little bit heavy, so we're going to give you just a little bit of a snippet for them. But the concept of social contagion is central to the Federation's ideology. What inspired you to frame systemic oppression through the lens of biological and medical language, and how do you see this relating to real-world authoritarian regimes?
So when you look at real-life fascist governments, one of the things that you see is this odd meshing of the mythical and the medical. This notion of hard science as the answer to all of life's questions and genetics specifically as the answer to all of life's problems. That if someone has proper genetics, then they will be a superior kind of person. And you meld that with a mythical notion of nation, of a people, a true people. And what I wanted to capture in the Federation as my evil dictatorship in the setting is a real approach to that in fiction. And of course, adding things like a magic system and classic fantasy races and trying to meld the mythical with the medical in a setting where the mythical is just as real as physical science is. And so this notion of social contagion in the setting and in real life authoritarian governments is about population control more than anything else, controlling behaviors, but controlling who is allowed to reproduce and what kind of reproduction happens and in what ways, such that some greater, purer race can be brought about into the future. And so when you look at, say, Mussolini's fascist Italy, you have Mussolini himself, who claims he is not a racist, but his policies disagree with that claim, and then other fascists in Italy who are openly anti-Semitic, openly anti-racist, particularly anti-African. And then you go to the sort of turbocharged version of fascism that is National Socialism, that is Nazism. And you see a dialed up version of that, this notion of the Volk, this notion of the true people who have ancestry back to the overmen, these super race of man who lived in Atlantis and were destroyed by their ancient enemy. And the ancient enemy has been hounding them. And the ancient enemy, the Jew, the communist, brought about World War I and destroyed Germany. And so only by destroying the old enemy, only by destroying those who history has condemned already, can we bring about the glorious future that is promised by dear leader. And I really wanted to capture that in the setting and move that timeline forward, because the trouble that real fascist governments run into is they select for loyalty more than they select for competence. And so within the first few years in power, fascist regimes become incredibly unstable states where the bureaucracy of the government is just falling apart at the seams, because the paper pushing jobs that are like super boring but super important are done by these party lackeys, are done by these absolute dipshits who they wouldn't know their head from their ass if they looked at a mirror. And so the state becomes incredibly unstable incredibly quickly, and we see fascist governments collapse almost as soon as they form. They engage in a war that they have no business engaging in. They make enemies with neighbor states. They make rivals with neighbor states, and they can't function in the world. They can't function in a global economy, and so they fall apart. And so my notion with the Federation is, well, what if that state didn't fall apart? What if dear leader was a near divine being, had magic power, had immortality, had the ability to reach beyond what mortal limits could provide. And so you get this far future setting where the racialism and racism inherent to fascist ideology and inherent to Nazi ideology is pushed to the absolute extreme. And this notion of social contagion is about protecting humanity from the other species and protecting the pure humanity, read those who follow the absolutist ideology, from non-absolutist within humanity.
Okay.
I also want to make the statement that while reading the book, you actually get a sense of today's culture. There's so many sects of religion, race, everything like that, and people divide themselves. So you see that as you're going through the book, you kind of understand the thinking, the thought behind, well, you're Indian, I can't be around. Or you're white, I can't be around, So as you're reading it, you kind of think in your head, well, why are we like this? A lot of people don't realize that the ideology behind fascism and that separation, and there's one true whatever. One, going back to Christianity, there's no one knows. And the divide between us should not be anything. We're all humans. We all have skin and blood. So there should not be that. But man made that a thing. So you're reading this book and you're taking in all this information about all this different things, and you kind of start moving it into modern day society, and you're like, oh God, we're doing this to ourselves.
Yeah.
Sorry. I got into it, okay?
I'm so glad. No, I'm so glad. I love having the opportunity to hear someone's thoughts on the work, because writing is a solitary venture. You write by yourself, and then once you put it out in the world, it's not yours anymore. And often, unless somebody like leaves a review on Amazon or you personally know the reader, you don't really get to hear what people think about your work unless you really blow up, right? You're Brandon Sanderson, you're Pierce Brown, you're Sarah Moss, and then you can hear what people think about your work all the time. But for most writers, it's like, I hope people liked it. I hope people got out of it what I wanted them to get out of it. It seems like you're taking the beats and the meanings that I really wanted people to take from the story.
Yeah, I definitely definitely did that. I think more your writing style was absolutely phenomenal because it made it clear what was going on. The structure of your book was very good. So I'm going to go into the next question because we have questions about structure, and I don't want to jump ahead because I will, because my brain was just all over the place. But memory and its frailty, I can't say words right, appear throughout the narrative. From Liam struggling to recall his wife's face to the
Erasure.
Thank you. Of historical truth, was this intentional as a commentary on how trauma affects identity, or did it emerge originally during the writing?
It is intentional, but it is not necessarily a commentary on trauma. It's a commentary on what a fascist regime does to the people that it occupies. And where the fascist comes to power, propagating this notion of returning to the glorious past, that there is this great tradition that modernity destroyed, and by restoring the great tradition, we can unlock our potential as the nation, as the people. And then what they do in practice is they detonate history. And they strip the people down of their past and strip the people down of the concept of future until all that remains is the present struggle. And that present struggle translates into whatever the party's current enemy is, whatever the current military conflict is, whatever the current sacrifice demanded of you is. And so Liam's failure to remember even his wife's face is this personalization of that, to say, here is someone who has lived in a regime that has detonated past and future, who is struggling to maintain a grip on his own personal past and his own personal future. And it's just sort of, when you meet Liam, he is an alcoholic. He is wandering in the middle of nowhere, doing these, this dead end job more than anything else, this scrapping work. With this sort of vague notion that maybe one day he can stand up to the Federation all by himself, but with no real means of making that happen. And that's exactly what the fascist wants. That's what the fascist wants of their people. They want someone who is completely cowed, who can only understand the now, who only has the mental faculties to tolerate the present, because the present is so traumatizing. The present is so difficult that one could not look backwards, could not look forward. They can only sacrifice in the moment for the party, for the cause, for the movement.
So, cult factor.
All right. So now this next question is it's one of my absolute favorite, and I'll explain that in a minute. But this book, it explores whether sentience in machines carries moral weight. Maximilian is definitely going to be one of my favorite characters. Maximilian's tragic arc suggests that consciousness without autonomy is perhaps a greater suffering than non-existence. Did you intend this as a statement on the nature of consciousness itself?
Yes, kind of. Terms and conditions apply. Yes, terms and conditions apply. So my very favorite trope in science fiction is the fun robot. I adore the fun robot character more than just about anything else, and I was so excited to have my own fun robot. And I knew that I needed a comic relief. I knew I needed a bit of levity in a setting that's so heavy. And so I wanted people to meet Max in a situation that was dire and dark, sure, that still focused on the themes, especially in the horror sequence aboard the Jubilation in Act 1. But Max ended up becoming much more, especially by the end of book 3. Max just becomes this fully fleshed out character beyond being the silly robot that he was initially intended to be. But with Max, you see him. You see Max at his absolute lowest. You meet him at the lowest, just like you meet Liam, and you do see this imitation of human life. In a way, Max was supposed to be this perfect fascist, literally a machine, not just a machine man, but a machine, someone who would obey because their programming gives them nothing but to obey. And even then, by interacting with the world beyond the party, and despite his programming preventing him from having a truly self-actualizing experience, Max is still reaching beyond the party ideology. And so with Max, I think where he became a character in like, I need a silly robot sidekick for the protagonist to take the weight off of the plot at times, ultimately he becomes an example of, no matter how far into this spiral you are, you can come out of it. That through your own will and through your own embracing of self and through the reaching toward others and the finding companionship in others, you can rescue yourself from the fascist movement that may have brainwashed you. And Max very much does that.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love that theme in this character. It reminds me a lot of the Antinium and Pirate Abba's The Wandering Inn, of the Borg from the original Star Trek. That gaining individuality, that gaining consciousness is just, I mean, it's a big theme, especially in today's world where we have AI. We might not have achieved, bottom up AI the way, people want, but, we're getting there, and, it'll be one day soon, and I'd love to see that, so.
She's on her own on that thought. I can't stand AI. It drives me insane. Half the time when you're looking something up, it gives you wrong answers, and they're wrong, especially historical facts or biblical facts. It drives me crazy. But I digress. On Liam's journey from Blackguard operative to independent salvager represents a personal redemption arc. Do you believe he achieves true redemption by the novel's end, or is the redemption impossible for someone conflicted in a system's crimes?
I hope so. I hope so. I tried very hard not to pound my readers over the head with moral conclusions. Instead, Liam's arc over the entire trilogy is this seeking of redemption, and you get the act 1 of that, literal in Max, but is more hard to see in Liam. And for Liam, he was, I think, a love letter to the guys that I served with, where a lot of us enlisted thinking we were part of this noble cause and that we were defending ourselves against a great enemy, and we were defending our country and our families against a great enemy. And then as the war on terror progressed, and as more and more of us got chewed up by it and saw what it was plainly by the end, is that we were pawns in this geopolitical game to secure resources, that the lives of the people we were supposedly liberating were irrelevant to the state we were fighting for, that the lives and security of our own countrymen were irrelevant to this cause of pursuing capital, right? Pursuing oil markets abroad and pursuing geopolitical interests abroad. And so Liam's story is the same story as millions, literally millions, of American veterans who, after the war on terror, thought that they were Luke Skywalker and realized they were the stormtroopers. And so I hope that Liam found redemption, and I hope that my brothers and sisters also find it, because we can't control what we did before, and we can't control what we didn't know, but we can know better, and we can do more tomorrow, do better tomorrow than we did yesterday.
I agree.
Tasania's resistance within the concentration camp is contrasted with Liam's external salvage operation. How intentional was this parallel structure in showing different forms of resistance in the same oppressive system?
Very intentional. So I love multiple perspectives, especially in epic sci-fi. It gives you a chance to explore more of the world. And so in Liam, you see a place that, or at least at first in Act One aboard the Jubilation, you see a place that the Federation once touched and then abandoned. And in Tassiana, you see the Federation actively involved in governance and what that active involvement in governance looks like. And it looks like terror, right? It looks like labor camps in the middle of nowhere. And so having their stories side by side allows me to explore more of this world, but allows the reader to see the state that was in a sort of stasis in the middle of, in the middle of dark space aboard this abandoned colony ship, and then the Federation that is aboard Sifil Moon and the labor camp there.
No, it's funny. When as I was reading it, I know my history brain. So as I was reading it, I thought of, and you're probably gonna laugh at me, I thought of the railroad ghettos that they had when America was being built. That's the first thing that popped in my brain was the Chinese labor camps that they had built. When people say there's never been concentration camps in America, there has. It was the railroad when they were building the railroad. So my brain instantly went and turned all the characters into Chinese workers from the reading about the labor camps in America. For some reason, on there, all I saw was that. So if you need a reference, go learn about the train being built in America and what America really did to people when they were working on the railroads, because it is actually a big part of American history nobody knows about.
So my direct draw for Sifil Moon are instances of resistance inside really the dark heart of Nazi terror, where you have in one of the eastern labor camps near the end of the war, the camps get shifted to like hardline military production, and where they were perpetuating themselves for much of the early period of the KL system, the concentration lagen system. By the mid-war period, at least by 1941, they're producing wartime materials for the Wehrmacht. And there's a camp in the east where inmates are planning a revolt, and their job is to make grenades. They make the potato masher stick grenades that the Wehrmacht uses. And this is a tightly monitored system where smuggling is like instantly execution if you're caught taking something from the work site. But these inmates are taking a pinch of gunpowder at a time while they're making the grenades and putting it in sacks. And over time, they've collected like a significant amount of gunpowder, and they're going to do these timed detonations around the facility to send the SS into a tizzy trying to contain all these different fires and explosions. And in the chaos, they're going to attempt to escape. Now, they get caught and they get murdered. But it's this attempted revolution that even someone at their absolute most beaten down, where they're on maybe 1,000 calories a day, where they're doing 12 to 16 hours of backbreaking labor a day, where they are watching their friends die of exhaustion, die of malnutrition, get murdered by the guards, get beaten by the guards, and there's absolute zero of human will, and they can still fight. They can still take this desperate stand. Or you can look to the Warsaw uprisings, where again, it's a similar situation, and the conditions in Warsaw were below that of a third world country. And yet the people of Warsaw still attempted to fight back against their oppressors. And so what I wanted to show in the prison break sequence in Sifil Moon in Tassiana's arc was that even at the lowest, people have this incredible ability to reach beyond the human condition and say, despite the fact that I might fail, despite the fact that it might be hopeless, I'm still going to put a death grip on hope, and I'm still going to fight.
Your own will set you free.
Yeah.
Maximilian's creation of a false brotherhood, betrothed, and his junk repair shop suggest AI attempting to simulate humanity. Did you intend this to be tragic, pathetic, or actually a form of quiet rebellion against his program?
We just did that question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we did. My brain. I'm tired. Your turn.
Let's see. The Jubilation serves as both a literal ship and a metaphor for buried history. Why did you choose an abandoned colony ship as the central location rather than a planetary setting?
One of my inspirations for theme and tone, especially for Act 1, is the video game series Dead Space. I absolutely adore that series. And in the first game, you're a mechanic whose job is to fix a mining ship that has gone dark. And you get aboard the mining ship, and there's monsters on the mining ship. And I just obsessed over that sequence, over the setting, over the tone of it, over the like crawling through this abandoned, long forgotten thing and trying to unearth what happened there. And so for the Jubilation, I really wanted to capture that of like approaching this thing that should be safe and it very suddenly isn't, this thing that should be empty and it's very suddenly not, and how someone can try and escape a circumstance like that. And so I really enjoyed getting to dig back into this game that was really important to my teenage years and give it some new life in this setting. That was a lot of fun for me.
So he's like us in Mario Kart. The introduction of Mary the Whisperer and the Leviathan technology suggests large forces at play. Was this always part of the story's scope, or did you envision further narrative beyond this book?
Yes and yes. So yes to both parts of that question. So I took a lot of Brandon Sanderson's creative writing classes that he offers for free online. So he just records his BYU lectures and posts them. And I just dug into those. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours of that creative writing course I absorbed over the months leading into me writing this book. So, I wanted to commit fully to it. I wanted to do it well. And I'm so used to academic writing, I needed a crash course in fiction. And one of the things that Sanderson really emphasizes in his classes is that readers do fall in love with settings, but they have to first fall in love with characters. And so a lot of book one's work was giving you characters and giving you stakes and giving you personal drives, where Tatiana, you meet her wanting to avenge her murdered family. Liam, you meet him wanting to find his wife. You meet these characters as they are trying to deal with a conflict that is small in a way, very personal, in this world that's much larger. And then in book two, the setting really opens up, and I get a lot deeper into the magic system. I get a lot deeper into the technical aspects of the Federation itself, of this new government that's forming to resist them. And then book three gets downright esoteric. I spend a lot of time on the sort of deep lore of the magic system in book three. And by that time, I think my readers have attached themselves to the characters and they're willing to go on that more, I don't want to say clunky, but certainly more technical journey. So I spent a lot of time in book one trying to establish that there is this world beyond these characters, in the hope that my readers would fall in love with the characters and then ultimately want to explore the world that I'd spent so much time making.
You did that very, very well.
Shucks.
So like I said, I read, sci-fi, but it's not really a big love of mine, I guess I should say. I read anything. But sci-fi has always been like the line of, I'll read it, but I may not understand it. And, but your characters are what drew me in. Their personalities, their traits, their fight, their will, everything kind of like meshes when you read it. So I just wanted to make sure you knew, like, you did that extremely well. Congrats. Because not many people can do that. And I haven't seen a lot of indie authors that write science fiction understand the more importance of understanding the characters. So I just had to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I put a lot of work into that, so I'm glad that it was appreciated. I'm very glad it was appreciated.
Let's see. Your narrative weaves together multiple point of views, Liam to Sonia and others. What was your writing process for maintaining thematic coherence across these disparate storylines?
More editing than you would ever care to do. Just an aggressive amount of reading that section again and making sure I got it right. And there's a sequence, there's a fight scene in the middle of the book that sort of transitions from Act 2 to Act 3. And I don't want to, spoil anything for readers in the audience who haven't gotten there yet. But it was technically probably the hardest thing I did throughout the book, because over the course of the fight, you get 3 different perspective characters. And one of the ways that I kept it coherent is there is a character named Drunner who has a sniper rifle. It's like this high-powered sniper rifle. And when it fires, I always make a note to drop the paragraph and in bold print put "ka-thump" to designate like this is a whomper of a rifle. And having that "ka-thump" occur in Drunner's perspective and then occur again in Tatiana's and then occur again in Liam's allows me to ground the reader in what order of events is happening, so that you get the fight broken down in these probably 5-minute increments, where you get that 5 minutes through Drunner's eyes and then through Tatiana's eyes and then through Liam's eyes. And the grounding to let you know like what is happening and when is it happening is the report of that sniper rifle. And that was really technically complex to make work and to make land, but it was a lot of fun to write. It was a lot of fun to write. And after that, after I realized, like, if I have these sort of grounding sequences where some very tactile thing in the world occurs, it becomes really easy to switch from POV to POV in a sequence, so long as you have something to ground the reader in, like, oh, that happened then, and so this is what's happening now. And it's really easy to do multiple POVs when the characters are far apart from one another. Right, Tatiana is, on a different side of the galaxy from Liam when you meet both of them, and so it's really easy to have multiple POVs because they're not running into each other and they're certainly not stepping over each other in their sequences. But by the end of the book, when all the characters are together, you have to put a lot more work in grounding the reader in chronology and what's happening moment to moment in the story, and that was a really fun challenge to take on.
It was more like a pyramid, so you see the characters grow when they come together. That was something that I realized in your book. I don't know. You there?
Hello?
Okay.
Yeah, somebody called me and I had to hang up, and I think my audio got a little weird.
I was saying that
It happened again.
Yep, it happens to me too. That's what I was doing at one point. But I noticed like your characters are here, and here, but it's like a pyramid. They just go up and they start getting closer and closer until they're together. And I really enjoyed that because you got more of each character's individuality by doing that. Yeah. So that made it even more interesting.
Thank you. And that's one of the things I love in fantasy does this really well, right? Fantasy books tend to have these sweeping narratives and dozens of perspective characters, especially if you're reading Game of Thrones, right? Yes. And seeing those characters meet for like the big thing at the end is one of my favorite story beats. I absolutely adore and then all the plot lines hit and we have to face the great crisis at the end. And so I really wanted to do that because I love reading that. And if I enjoy reading it and I enjoy writing it, I know other people would enjoy reading it too.
Well, you kind of have answered all of our questions except for the last one. So we're going to skip ahead. If you could ask your characters one question, what would it be?
I would ask Liam if he feels like he earned it. And that question, I think, will make a lot more sense to someone who's read the full trilogy. But I would ask Liam if he thinks he earned it. And I don't know what his answer would be. Something that occurred I think somewhere in the middle of book 2, and I'd been working on the series for 2 years at this point. I had been spending basically all of my free time writing. When I wasn't actively teaching classes, I treated writing like my full-time job. So I'd write, 4 to 6 hours a day. And by the end of book 2, the characters had completely left my control, and had really become themselves. And so I don't know how Liam would answer that question. But I hope the answer is yes. I hope that he feels like he did.
You want to ask them our favorite question?
Do you have anything to ask us?
Yes, I have several things to ask you guys, actually. My first is, how did y'all go from what I'm assuming was just like a family book club hour to wanting to get into podcasting?
So, actually, what it was. So, I have been arc reading for years and years. Obviously, I built up my platform here on TikTok and working on Instagram, and I had this vision. I talked to so many indie authors who either they don't know how to create their photo for their front of their book, or they need help from other authors, or they can't find a place where they fit in. Maybe their book is a little taboo and people are discounting it because it's taboo, but they just don't have the right reader group. And I've listened to these struggles for years, and the more I listened, the more I thought, well, what if I can create that place for them?
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to my older sister. She's Porcupine, and she's more of the business side of it, because I just had a vision and handed it to her and was like, hey, can we make this happen? And we had a podcast at one point, but it was more of a just chit chat podcast. And I love doing podcasts, and I was like, well, what if we do it with indie authors? And then I was talking to one of our indie authors that I work with, and he told me that someone asked him for $300 to be on their podcast.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm not. I want to make it free. I want to be able to say, hey, we enjoy your book. Hey, let's get you out here. I want to use my platform to help. And so we started off Faraway Sister Haven, and then
Yeah. I just love to read and I love to write, and
I forced her to do it.
Yeah. Well, I struggle significantly with mental health issues. So like writing and, all that, it can be hard for me. And doing this with my sister helps me be sociable in a way that doesn't feel threatening to me. So
Good. And I'm always amazed at literature's power to elevate and liberate. That no matter what you're going through, no matter where you're coming from, putting the pen to paper is really good for the noggin. It's really, really good for the noggin.
I think it's more important for us too, because her mom adopted me when I was younger, when I didn't have a place to be. Mm-hmm. And the way we met, first we met at a Boys and Girls Club when we were really young. But then in 6th grade, we found each other again. I didn't know it was her, and she didn't know it was me, but she was sitting in the middle of the hallway reading Harry Potter, and I'll never forget it. And she wouldn't talk to anybody. She was so antisocial, and I went and sat beside her, and I kept talking to her, and she told me to shut up. Then she told me that if I wanted to be her friend, I had to read Harry Potter. So she actually encouraged me to become the reader I am today.
Oh, that's so adorable. That is just a wonderful origin story. I love that.
Yeah, we are, by all means, we are sisters, no matter what. Her mom was my mom's her mom. So we very much have stayed close throughout the years, and then when I decided to do this, I wanted her involved, even though I have to kick her butt sometimes. I wanted her fully involved in it.
And then when my life kind of hit a point of implosion, my sister was here for me and was like, "Hey, just move in with me, just come home." And I was
Well, that's wonderful.
She saved my life once, so
she's
it's only fair.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely adore that.
But any other questions?
Yes, to both of you, and answer in whatever order you like. What is your favorite book?
Oh God, don't do that to me.
Okay, right now, and it's probably because I brought it up earlier in the podcast, but the Wandering Inn series by Pirate Abba it has become one of my all-time favorite books, even more than the Harry Potter when we were growing up. It's such a sprawling universe. I absolutely love it. That, and I talked to you about the Antinium, the character in there. I absolutely fell in love with the Antinium and their struggle because, it's self-explanatory if you know ants, but yeah.
So, me myself, I actually have a couple, but my absolute favorite, and people make fun of me all the time for this, is The Reader. And I cannot say the author's name correctly. It's a historical fiction about a young boy, and actually, what I found the book at a thrift store like 15 years ago, and I didn't know what it was about, but the cover of it has this purple flower, and I was like, I wonder what this is. It's called The Reader. So I picked it up, and the first paragraph talking about having hepatitis, it got me, and I devoured the book in like 2 hours. But I think for a historical fiction person, that's my true love of all books is historical fiction. Or I love biographies. I love documentaries. I love all that kind of stuff. So I think that book it painted such a vivid picture in my mind. Plus the whole Holocaust factor and what the woman did and the feelings involved in it, and knowing that she was illiterate, she didn't even know what she was doing half the time. She knew something was wrong, but she doesn't know what she's signing and stuff like that. So I think along with the story, it reminded me a lot of my mother, who for a long part of my life had issues with writing and understanding, and someone who learned with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of connected with me because of my mother. So that would have to be my all-time favorite. I think I bought it for like 40 people here on TikTok because I'm like, if I see this book on your gift list, I'm gonna buy it for you. But The Reader is a very good book, and it was just very emotional, and I loved it. That in the tattoos of say the word.
Auschwitz?
Yes.
Auschwitz.
I love that whole series. I've read every one of them. They are permanently on my shelf in my historical fiction section of my library that is hidden right now. But those were really good too. Also, Maggie Hope Mysteries. And if you haven't read any of those, it's a World War II female British spy.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Oh, it's so good. So good. But there are parts in it where she's a spy in Germany, and they describe very harsh subjects. So they actually go into detail with the Jews being strung and the dogs attacking them and stuff. So it's hard to read, but the storyline gives so much like little fun things. So it aligns with history, but it's not technically history.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many historical facts in the series that you kind of just keep going. There's like 13 books in the series. It's really good. But that's it. I'll stop.
Wonderful.
I could go on all day. What are your favorite book? You said you like Brandon Sanderson. Now, I personally have only read one book by Brandon Sanderson.
Mm.
Oh no!
So I'll give you 3. I'll give you one for each genre. So on nonfiction. Oh, are we okay?